Hiya.
Hi.
So introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rich Cross, and I run the Hippies Now Wear Black website, which I've done for quite some time now. Must be getting on for about 15 years by now. And I write quite a lot about different aspects of anarcho-punk, anarchist punk, the anarchist movement in Britain in particular, but also kind of Europe. And a little bit in the US as well. And I recently, with two other collaborators, produced a full colour, large format book on Poison Girls, which we believe is the first long, serious treatment of the band to be published. Yeah, the genesis of the book is quite interesting. So for when I first started writing about bands from that time, so the kind of late 70s into sort of mid 80s, who came to be known as anarcho-punk. At the time I started writing it, there was almost nothing in print about those bands, about Crass and Flux and Dirt and all those other bands like that. And over a period of time, that changed. So we had sort of Ian Glasper's series of books. We had members of Crass producing kind of various material, and it moved on, except for it didn't move on with Poison Girls. They just weren't getting the attention, the treatment, their kind of creativity, their artistry, their politics kind of deserved. So there was a journal came out, kind of a hybrid kind of academic thing, but also just kind of activist thing called Punk and Post-Punk. And I wrote a piece for that on Poison Girls. It was like a, 10,000 word history of the band. And at that time, we were still blessed with Lance and with Vi, as well as Richard Famous. And I sent it to them. And they were really positive and really encouraging about kind of what I'd done. And I wanted to do more. And really, really sadly, within a couple of years, I was writing extended sort of obituaries, life appreciation. So first for Vi, who we lost, and then for Lance, who we lost as well. And that kind of put me back in touch with other members of the wider sort of Poison Girls family, because obviously I wanted them to be happy with what I was saying. It was accurate, it was fair, it was on message, and they were great. Again, they were really supportive. But kind of all of that stuff meant I was kind of a name that people kind of knew when they were thinking about who might be able to write about Poison Girls. So the book came about because of the great enthusiasm of Ramsey at PM Press, who wanted to have a book on Poison Girls. So he got a designer, Alex Dunn, who's a superb graphic designer who does book design, an editor called Aaron Yankee, who's a documentary maker and a very, very experienced editor. And they approached me and said, did I want to write anything for it? And I said, I want to write everything for it. You try and stop me, and I would really like to come on board and do that. And that's how the process began. And over a period of about a year, we put the whole thing together.
Nice. And I'm going to get a copy at some point. I've still not got a copy, Richard.
There's still time.
There is still time because I really, really love Vi Subversa. And do you know what? That you made a really good point actually about the Poison Girls not getting the coverage they deserve. And do you know what? Me and there's a small group of us as women. I don't know if you've heard of Lou Moon from Amongst Strange, no, Family of Strangers, and Cherry B, the poet. What we've noticed is when women get older in the scene, we get pushed aside a lot more. Even, I won't name any names, but there's some women festivals that celebrate women that seem to exclude older women. And we were talking, we were actually sitting around talking about it. And I said, when I was in the Cherries, I applied for this particular festival and we were totally snubbed. It was a blatantly, oh no, you're not the type of people we want on our festival type of vibe. And we realised that they'd had similar responses to me. And at first I thought it was because I took it a bit personal. I thought, oh God, maybe it's me. And we sort of dawned on us it's because we're a bit older.
I mean, absolutely. The battle continues. It's depressing in one way that you have to keep fighting the same fights around the same issues and the same causes. But it's testament to the need to keep keep doing that, to refuse to be excluded or sidelined or silenced or marginalised. I mean, going back to Vi, I mean, one of the things I think is utterly extraordinary about her, and was an extraordinary woman, is her determination to take the stage and strap on a guitar and stand in front of a microphone in 1977 in her 40s. Yeah. So it's a battle now. It's a battle today, but it's not unheard of to see musicians of that age up on stage. It's not. But at that moment, like the absolute, ground zero of the punk explosion, it's all about the kids and it's all about year zero and it's all about breaking a connection with everything in the past. And she's a middle-aged mother. And she's going, no, this is for me too. And if you try and shut me out of this, I'm having none of it. Like, I am having none of it. I will, you can try and get rid of me, it ain't happening. Yeah. But in 1977 to do that, like, who are who are you looking to for your sort of peers? You're it. You are doing the thing that needs to be done. But to have the bravery to do that, I mean, alongside all the other musicians in the band as well, of course, but she was the front woman. She's the kind of epicenter of it. She's singing songs, and she sings songs about motherhood and domesticity and the being locked away in the home and the gender politics of sexuality. This is not what the kids on the street are singing about, is it? I mean, those are things your mum might be concerned with if you're a 15, 16-year-old punk. And Vi was saying, yeah, absolutely, those are issues your mum might. Why don't you talk to your mum about that? But, it was a different world for her to have the guts, just the sheer guts to get up there. And loads of people were cruel and offensive and horrible to her. And she just shook it off like, no, I'm not having it. I'm here. Get used to it. What a brilliant way to approach it.
And I fucking love her for that, honestly. I really do. And even as I get older, because I'm 45 now, so she was about my age when she released her first single, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And she was like,
yeah, that would be about right, yeah. Not far off, yeah.
Yeah, I just absolutely, I've got so much love for Vi, and it's a shame that I never got to meet her in person. Because you met her in person.
Yeah, so my first sort of face-to-face contact with the band was on their Total Exposure tour. So they've just made the decision to separate from Crass, and they've organised an independent tour of the UK in 1981. And I kind of knew their stuff. I kind of bought everything they'd released up until that point. The gig was organised by the local CND group. And had I been slightly better connected to them, we could probably have supported them. The very first thing they said when we came into the room to interview them, they said, "Can you play?" Unfortunately, we weren't all in town to do it. So that's a huge regret of mine. I could have supported Poison Girls just for the one of not asking the right person in CND if we could play. Anyway, we had an interview with them. So it was me, Hef, who went on to be part of Toxic Shock. We were partners and we were in a band at the time. And a 14-year-old fanzine editor called Clem. They were extraordinary. They gave us about 45 minutes backstage. These three scrappy little kids to sit down and ask them questions about feminism and the bomb and being anti-state and what anarchism was about and what they felt about vegetarianism. And they spoke to us. And I mentioned this in the start of the book. I had great parents. I had brilliant mum and dad who were so supportive of me. But until that point, no grown-up had ever spoken to me with the kind of respect and the kind of recognition that these complete strangers who only just met me did. I was having a political discussion with these people. They weren't talking down to me. I mean, we knew very little. We'd done very little. We were kids. But they were absolutely prepared to sit down and say, yeah, this is what we think about disarmament. This is what we think about what you do about unemployment. This is what we think about political activism. And the three of us, it was a real moment. And I'm not historicizing that and going back and saying it was something I didn't think at the time. We came out of that kind of thinking, wow, that was extraordinary. That they had that approach to us and were willing to speak to us on what felt like completely equal terms. So that was my first contact with them, and we then started writing to them. After that, we kind of shared the interview that we'd done, then sent them fanzines that kind of we were working on, and it kind of sort of went on from there, really.
That's just brilliant, isn't it? Like at the time as well, giving you that space, that time.
Yeah.
And I know from speaking to like Hager the Womb and flipping heck, Zilla from Rubella Ballet, they talk about Vi and how supportive she was of people and women as well, like young women in the scene.
And then we went to a gig. What would it have been? It'd been sort of 82 up in Cleator Moor. So fascists sort of broke up the gig, but it was an amazing experience. So it was Rubella Ballet were playing support to Boys and Girls, and a kind of local kind of mixture of sort of rednecks and kind of beer boys and kind of slightly more tuned in sort of fascists came in to try and break the gig up. And again, the whole band, it's not just five, but like their refusal to kind of back down, really intimidating. This gang of thugs turn up, try and sort of wreck the thing. And again, Vi's having none of it. And it was one of those moments where basically the entire of the audience, us, the people who come to see Boys and Girls, just turned on these thugs and just chased them out of the building. And they fled. And it was kind of a triumphant moment that we kind of seen them off. And we'd done it by kind of sticking together. And I've written something about that night, because again, that was another really sort of special night. But then unfortunately, the owners of the venue thought this is trouble and just literally pulled the plug. So kind of Boys and Girls were cut. And then at the very last minute, we had to flee in the van with Boys and Girls because we were helping them load up. We were going to stay at the squat where the organisers lived. And the fascists came back.
Oh.
Everyone else had dispersed, and we were just lugging in speakers and cables and everything else and guitars, and it was like faster, and we had to flee off into the night. Us, Rubella Ballet, Boys and Girls, all kind of lying on top of each other in the back of this van with all the gear, tearing off to escape the fascist horde, who'd obviously felt themselves quite humiliated and gone away and had a few more lagers and thought they'd come back for a second go.
Oh dear God!
But again, that was not the only experience. They had a lot of experience of being confronted by fascists. They were attacked in various ways. They were threatened in their home when kind of thugs worked out kind of where they lived. They could have buckled under that, and it would have been understandable to do that. But they didn't. They didn't do that. They stood up for themselves. Even for a while, they had a bit of a reputation of not being the source of trouble, but being a magnet for trouble. So they took the National Abortion Campaign, the NAC, to task. They'd asked them to come and play a benefit gig for them, which would be, a no-brainer. Boys and Girls, absolutely. Reproductive rights. What time do you want us? Like, not a question to even worry about. But then the organisers found out there'd been some trouble at Boys and Girls gigs, and then cancelled them. And Boys and Girls were absolutely indignant. And they were saying, do you not realise this is just capitulating? This is just giving in. Like, we can't go tail between our legs just because these ugly, ugly forces threaten us. We have to get up on stage and defy them. And they just simply wouldn't let them play the gig. So, Boys and Girls wrote a really kind of excoriating statement taking the NAC to task for just saying, you can't exhibit cowardice in the face of these threats. You just can't. You've got to stand up. And they weren't arguing about, going in with lump hammers, wherever else. They were just saying, you just got to stand there and show you're not going to be intimidated. That's still a pretty good and important message for today, I'd say.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of bravery, especially in that situation when you're feeling really frightened and quite vulnerable yourself. And it helps when you've got other people with you who say, like, we're going to stand together and we're going to say no and we're going to do this.
I was going to say, just to say a little bit else about the book that's kind of sort of worth mentioning, is that we're really pleased that we've been able to capture quite a lot of the visuals, the design, the iconography of Boys and Girls, because although they have a period of time when they're working with crafts, when It's primarily black and white stuff. It's the traditional kind of, photostat and duplicator black and white stuff. But they're not really a monochrome band. They have a whole rich design template and a palette, of posters and sleeves and badges and artwork and magazines and stuff that they produce. And one of the really nice things about doing the book was we did it in what's quite an unusual way, but it's the way I'd like to do it from now on. So normally, if there is a normal, you get a manuscript and you get it finished. So it's been through the editor and it's had all the tweaks and you've taken all the typos out, and then it's done. And then you pass it to the designer, and the designer starts to beautify it and kind of lay it all out. And we didn't do that. So because we were working as a threesome from the start, we might talk a little bit later about the book Let the Tribe Increase. But it's a book that I was a whole chapter I'd written, drafted a chapter on Poison Girls. So I was able to immediately share that with Aaron and with Alec. And within about a week, he came back with all these design ideas. And it was brilliant, which meant we were already thinking what the finished book might look like, even as I was writing it. So I would write more, I would share it with Alec. He would design it. What do you reckon? Do you like this? Do you like this? What should we do about this? And we were off on a search for getting as many images as we could from the archives. The family, Vi's son and daughter, were incredibly helpful in getting us access to the archive of the band. So we were able to digitize a lot of stuff. And we kept on developing the design sort of as we went. And PM Press had always said it could be a full colour book, large format book. So we could kind of really go to town. They were great as we kept on coming up with more ideas. We went, wouldn't it be nice if we put all of this thing called The Impossible Dream in, which is a magazine that Lance DuBoyle, the band's percussionist drummer, designed. And wouldn't it be great to have all these extra interviews with people? Wouldn't it be great to have extracts from Richard Famous's gig diaries? He kept a handwritten list of all the gigs that they went to. The gigs they played at, rather, from 1978 onwards. And we just kept on coming up with more things. And just to see it immediately what it might look like was a really, really nice way to work. And we could share it with PM Press as we were going and kind of, what do you think? And it's a really nice creative process, quite dynamic, because you kind of bounce off each other. I write something and it inspires Alec to do something, and kind of vice versa. And it just builds up over time. And just to finish off this bit, so they were also incredibly tolerant at PM Press. We agreed it would be 60,000 words. So we ended up at 100,000 words, which is slightly longer than 60,000, as you may be aware, those of you who are good at maths. And they didn't go like, whoa, stop writing. Because we were showing them what we'd done. They'd go, no, keep going, this is great. This is what we want. So that was also incredibly helpful, to be working with a publisher who kind of was absolutely up for it.
How did you get in there with PM Press?
Well, I'd known Ramsey for a long time. It might be useful to kind of sort of tune it in. So I don't know if you were aware of the musician and the author called Lance Hahn. So he was played in loads of different bands and was a writer for Maximum Rock and Roll magazine in the US. And he'd started to write a history of British anarchist punk bands from kind of back in the day. And he was really fascinated with his subject matter, and was approaching more and more people to do kind of interviews and get stuff from the fanzine archives. And as he was getting those interviews and so forth finished, he was publishing quite a few of them in Maximum Rock and Roll. And the entire intention was to, when he kind of got to the end of that process, that there was a book in that, so that you could take those and rework them as kind of chapters. But incredibly sadly, Lance got ill and wasn't able to continue, and sadly finally died of a number of health conditions. So the book was kind of unfinished. And it sort of bounced around for a while as a manuscript, saying, well, can somebody pick this up? Can somebody do something with this to kind of get this book, which was going to be called Let the Tribe Increase, from the Mob. It's from the Mob lyric. Can someone get this done? I'd said to Ramsey, well, can I take a look at that? And then he sent me all the kind of manuscript, and we began kind of work on it. And it's become quite the task. It's great. And it's kind of grown and grown and grown as a project. But we are kind of committed to sort of seeing it through. Because Lance got ill, he obviously had loads of bands he hadn't made contact with at the time. So loads of stuff that is fresh and kind of sort of needs to be done. And as there's a bit of a theme with PM Press is you kind of excite each other and the project gets bigger. So we were thinking, oh, wouldn't it be good to have stuff about fanzines in it? Wouldn't it be good to have stuff about activism and politics in it? Wouldn't it be great to have stuff about design and kind of propaganda and visuals and artwork? And wouldn't it be great to have stuff about... And it just went on. So it just became and is continuing to become a bigger and bigger project. So we were in full dialogue about that. And that's the context in which they thought, oh, actually, that might be someone who could write us something about Poison Girls, which unfortunately meant I stopped work on the Tribe book to write the book on Poison Girls. I can now go back to the Tribe book, so that is the next plan.
Oh, nice. So how long did it take for the Poison Girls book to come together and get to a published state?
The main bit was over a period of 12 months, so they got in touch in the January, and by the end of that year, we were pretty much there. And then inevitably, this kind of scheduling it all in. And when you're working with PM Press are an anarchist, the radical publisher, but they still have to kind of follow some of the logic of the kind of publishing industry, which means you have to kind of commit to publishing so many months ahead of doing so. So we were having to meet certain deadlines so that they could kind of register the book and advertise it and schedule it and all that sort of stuff. So it was a really intense 12-month period. I say because I was working on the Lance Hahn book, I had quite a lot of stuff already, but I did a whole load more interviews with people and found out a whole load more stuff from the archive as I went. But it's pretty intense. Like all of us, you're doing it in the gaps, in the margins. You're doing it when you're not working. You're doing it when you're not, love it, but looking after the grandkids takes time. You're doing all the other stuff and like the washing up and shopping and all that. It's never... I am a full-time writer and I can spend my days dedicated to my craft. It's always, right, it's 9 o'clock at night. I finally finished for the day. I better do 2 hours rest before I donk out. Because that's the reality, right? Because none of us are in a fortunate enough position to go, the thing I like to do all the time, I can afford to do all the time.
Do you know what? Interestingly enough, maybe it's the link with the punk. I don't know, but I don't know anybody who's able to do that. Nobody.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. So it is about filling in the gap. So it took that long. If I could have done nothing else, we could have done it faster. But that's the reality of it. And we were scheduling endless Zoom calls. My collaborators are on the West Coast in the US, so obviously we had to schedule a time that was just about work. For both of us to do online meetings and catch up. Alec came over. He did one trip to the UK, so he came to stay with me, which is great. And that was when he got access to the Poison Girls archive as well. And then he came and scanned loads of my stuff as well from my archive. There's quite a few bits of mine in the book from back in the day, because I was an inveterate hoarder even then. A lot of people think, oh, I wish I'd have kept that poster and thingy from when I was 18. I probably did. I've got posters of Poison Girls Speak that I very gingerly took off the wall back in the day. So I had quite a lot of stuff as well. It's great fun.
If somebody wanted to publish something with PM Press, how would they go about it? Would they just email them, or would they like to see a sample of what you do, or do you have to do a synopsis of the type of book you want to...
There's absolutely no harm in kind of firing off an email and just saying I've got an idea. The best thing to do is to write a full kind of book pitch. So it's something you can literally Google, like, how do I write a book pitch? There are whole books about how you write a book pitch. So you would want to set out, what the book was about, what the themes were, maybe a sample chapter of what you kind of got in mind. Thinking about, who the audience for it might be, thinking about how you would be able to make a song and dance about it and promote it and get sort of people interested in it. And then why you're the person to write it. That's a really good one. And of course, anything like a hook, is it the 20th anniversary of, is that coming up in a couple of years? Or is there some reason that this ties in with something kind of contemporary? So that's the best way to do it. And it is genuinely, if you look up online for how do I write a book pitch and send that in. And people have been very successful with doing that. They are, they're a small company, but incredibly prolific in how much material they produce. And I thoroughly recommend working with them. They've been great from day one. PM is about politics. PM Press is about politics through and through. They're an anarchist publisher, and what interests them is that in the context of a band like this, what is the countercultural practice? What are they saying? How does this relate to resistance to the powers that be, or the war machine, or the state, or what is it saying about the practice of feminism, or whatever else it might be? Whereas no problem with some of those other publishers, but they're a little bit more kind of music focused. There's a little bit more about a band history. And although, we document that, of course we do in the book, but we try to put it in some kind of wider context, whether that's a political context or a social context, or just to kind of make sense of why that might be the time to release that record, or why the band might be preoccupied with something at a particular time. So why PM Press? You can be comfortable that you can write a sympathetic anarchist history, and they're not going to wobble or be concerned about that, or say, can't you focus more on the vinyl? That's really probably key. You feel very much in tune with where they're at politically. Well, certainly I do as a writer, and feel very there for what we're not going to have battles about whether I can say certain things. I mean, at no point did they ever say you can't say that. Yeah, that really important sense of feeling in affinity with your publisher, I think, and feeling confident that they're not going to run away from the politics.
That's food for thought as well, and it's if anybody else is thinking of like writing and approaching publishers and stuff, then it's nice to have that knowledge, how to approach it, who to approach, why you're doing it. Really think about what you're doing as well.
Yeah. And I mean, and the best advice of all, is right. So it's now, there are so many kind of websites, magazines, fanzines, publishers, platforms. That's the best way to kind of build up your craft of stringing a sentence together is to do it, and to find an outlet for it. And we're not short of those at the moment. If you think about what you can find out online, or good old pen and ink fanzines that are still kind of out there. There are opportunities to do it. So if you haven't written and published much, that's the key. Is literally do it. It's like these are 3 chords, go form a band. I'm not quite sure what the equivalent. These are 3 paragraphs, go write something. But it's very much that is the way to do it. And there are opportunities out there to kind of test your craft and see if you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to get to the end of your manuscript. You're going to give up.
The website as well. So Hippies Now Wear Black. Can you tell me more about the website? And because I've seen the Lost Cherries when I was in them on there as well.
When I set it up, I was starting to write a number of kind of different pieces. So I wrote quite a lot about press and about anarchist politics and that sort of stuff. And I thought what would be really good is kind of somewhere where I can kind of talk to the world about all this sort of stuff that I'm writing about and thinking about. And also I can kind of publicize things that kind of people are doing in this very niche kind of area of kind of anarchisty influenced bands that have a connection with that original period from sort of 77, 84, 86, something like that. And for quite a while, there was relatively low levels of interest in it. It didn't get a lot of traffic, but the main thing was it was extraordinarily easy to keep on top of what people were doing because the level of activity was so low. So you could be pretty confident that you could track every release, every gig, every tour, every exhibition, every book that had some connection to it. Because if cumulatively you put all that together, I could cover that. Now, these days there is so much stuff that just trying to keep on top of. They're on tour, they've released something, they've repackaged something, they've been interviewed, they're on a podcast, they've got something on. It bears no relationship. There's so much more activity that just trying to keep on top of that, just to literally echo out a news feed about these are the things that you might be interested in. But over time, yeah, readership's grown quite a lot, got quite a lot of subscribers, and get quite a lot of nice interaction with kind of people on the site. And yeah, it's just a struggle at times to yeah. So if I sit down at 9 o'clock to do me 2 hours writing on the book, then at 11 o'clock I've got to do a load of blog updates.
Do you know what I'm
But it
hearing
has.
you?
There is just so much more. There is so much more happening in this space than there was.
When do you think it really started to ramp up? Because I just feel like 1 minute it was quiet, next minute it was like, wow, you know.
Yeah, there's probably a book in that. Explaining the reasons why. Yeah, well, there are lots of cyclical things in the life of kind of subcultures and movements and scenes, and maybe a lot of us are hitting a particular age cycle that makes people a bit more reflective and a bit more retrospective about things. Maybe partly it's the kind of political culture, social culture, disappointment with mainstream culture, all sorts of stuff. But there is no comparison now to what it was like 10, 15 years ago. If you just, in any 1 week, like how many bands from that very specific era are playing or on tour, are releasing stuff, are recording stuff, they say they're being interviewed, they're writing things, they're publishing things. It's extraordinary. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a whole bunch of things. But I imagine it will ebb and flow. I mean, one of the horrible things about many horrible things about being on social media, but one of the really kind of impactful ones is just how many death notices we see now.
Oh God, yeah.
It's just endless. It's just
It
I know, because
is.
we're coming to an age, we're coming to a generational tipping point in that sense. But it's horrible, isn't it? You just log on,
Yeah.
and you see somebody else has gone, so you've lost somebody else. So yeah,
and people quite young, really, because when you think
yes,
about it, it's like the late 50s, early 60s seems to be the average, you know, for our scene.
yeah.
And I don't know if it's because, like, you know, where, you know, we've lived and hung out in squats, and we had, like, you know, quite really rough periods in our life that have, you know, shortened our lifespan.
I mean, certainly, part of that original culture from sort of late teens, early 20s, certainly for me around that time, that healthy living wasn't really a factor. Being vegan was, and having all sorts of really clear ideas about what you would kind of eat and that sort of stuff. But I mean, we didn't have a healthy lifestyle by any conceivable stretch of the imagination, be it alcohol consumption or exercise or just looking after yourself. Maybe that for some people is part of that picture. Yeah, but I think inevitably it means there is going to be a bit of an ebb and flow of the level of sort of activity. But it doesn't feel to me like it's going to kind of peter out anytime soon, because there is enough committed people. And it's really nice going to gigs sometimes when you see the kind of 18 to 20-year-olds, the 20 to 23-year-olds kind of hanging out there, and that's great, right? So it's not just an old folks kind of convention. It is nice when you get that sense that actually other people are coming along who are quite interested in this and quite inspired by this. And how did you find this? I often think to myself, I don't know where you came across this to make these life choices that, you needed to go and see Steve Ignorant or whatever it might be, but they're there. And that's got to be a positive, right?
Yeah, it has. And do you know what surprised me? I've been looking at, you know, the analytics, as you do. You probably look at the analytics
Sure.
for your websites and stuff. And I've got the majority of people who tune into my podcast are aged between 18 and 35.
Okay, right.
So I didn't expect that. We do have a lot of people 55 plus, but yeah, I didn't expect that age range.
Really interesting. Well, that's good. Well, no, that's
It
a great
is
sign,
good.
right?
It's really good. Zilla as well, because she speaks a lot about that. Did you hear her podcast?
I have not played it back yet. No, I interviewed her for the book, and so she's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so she talks about Vi and the Poison Girls commune a lot.
Yeah,
which I'm guessing you will do in the book as well.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a very the whole mixture of memories from that time of from Pete Fender, from Gemstone, and from Sid and from Zilla as well, about what that was like as a space, and the good things and the more difficult things about it as well. But we don't sanitize the story. It's not a story of utopian bliss. Whether it's the fascists attacking gigs or the difficulties of living this life and living up to these standards and working with people. It is we acknowledge in the book, there are some challenges in that. It involves people, and people are imperfect, and imperfect things happen because of that. Yeah. So I should mention just a little bit about the sort of also the parallel thing we were doing with the band's music. So back in 1995, there was a kind of a retrospective CD release called Statement, which brought together kind of some of their albums and some of their kind of single materials as well. And we thought for a short while, well, we could just repress that to sort of tie in with the book. That would be fine. And then almost immediately, everyone said we can do better than that. There were things that were missing from that collection, so it wasn't kind of comprehensive, didn't include everything, and there's some periods of the band that are not very well represented, which is kind of the later periods as well, when they didn't go back and record a studio album. So we started to put together everything they'd released. So it was kind of comprehensive in terms of a retrospective. And then we were, with the help of Richard Famous and Pete Fender, pulling together kind of live tracks, demo tracks, unreleased material, and then a couple of really nice tracks by Vi and Richard. So they had they performed as a two-piece called That Famous Subversa. And they went out and sort of played at cabaret kind of type shows and little sort of poetry evenings and that sort of stuff. And they would kind of feature on the bill. Sometimes they supported Poison Girls. I never saw them do that, but that must have been quite a fun thing for them to come on and support themselves just as a two-piece. So there's some nice, really simple kind of basic home recordings of a couple of songs that they did. And altogether, this kind of kept growing and growing. We ended up with a 7 CD kind of box set. Again, we wanted to do all of the lyrics and put together another full color kind of booklet documenting the kind of history of the band in a different way to the way that we kind of done it in the book. And that's been a really, really, really exciting process. So that's literally being kind of pressed and printed out as we speak. So we're going to take delivery of that in the next couple of weeks, sending it out to people who've kind of pre-ordered, and also making a bit of a song and dance about it. And one of the things I really, really hope from the release is, of course, people who knew the band or kind of have memories of the band will kind of reconnect with their music. That'd be great, but it would be fantastic to have people who've not come across the band before to kind of make that connection and to kind of dig out and listen to some of the music and kind of be inspired by it. So we start disc 1 with the single release of Persons Unknown, probably the track they're kind of most famous for. And then we end disc 7 with another version of Persons Unknown, which is Vi and a guitarist, the last time she performed live and last time she performed that song at the Green Door in Brighton, just as another kind of two-piece little gig they organised to celebrate the re-release of the single by All the Mad Men. So it's a lovely way to kind of top and tail the kind of the experience with two very, very different versions of that song. It was a lovely gig. I was fortunate enough to be there, travel down to Brighton to see her. And that was, again, emotional moments with Boys and Girls, no two ways about it. But to hear her kind of perform that just on the cusp of the age of 80, and did a lovely job with it. And then just the room just kind of erupted in just kind of, just an affirmation of love towards this woman, It was just a lovely, lovely thing to be a part of. The Shend from the Cravats brought on a bunch of flowers that had kind of got together. And it was really sweet and just like a really rapturous sense of applause and appreciation and recognition for her. And I think that was a really, really nice thing that happened in the last few months. She was kind of with us, and it was great, I think, that she could experience that. And it was lovely, lovely to be there, just kind of be a part. It wasn't a massive stadium or anything, just a little scuzzy punk club sort of setting, but it was lovely. And I really kind of value, that's my last in-person sort of moment to sort of value it. It was great.
Oh, do you know what? That sounds brilliant. That sounds so beautiful.
It was lovely. It was
I know
really
it's beautiful is probably not the right word, but it kind of is in some ways.
No, I think it probably is. No, I think it probably is. It was beautiful. It was it was. It was all the things you'd want from that. What could you want more just from her on stage? The guy, the mic'd up acoustic guitar, just doing. They didn't do all 7 minutes of Persons I Know. Fair enough, but they did enough to kind of capture the feeling of it, and you knew that everybody in the room knew all the words.
Would you say that was
Yeah, it
your
was lovely.
favourite Poison Girls song?
Oh, people ask me this, and it depends what day of the week it is.
Yeah.
I literally have 100. So the nice thing about doing the CD set at the same time we're doing the book is it kind of reinforced the sense of Poison Girls being the soundtrack. As I was kind of writing it, the music of Poison Girls is kind of everywhere because I'm working on the CD and we're looking at different versions and mixes and remasterings and potential things we could include and all that sort of stuff. Literally, kind of as I'm writing over the kind of course of 12 months. And it reacquainted me with everything because there were songs I'd not heard for quite sort of some time, but they are so varied. Like their style is so different in the late 80s when it starts in the 70s. But you know, it's always inventive and unusual and unexpected and kind of committed and passionate and articulate. It's literally impossible. I tell you what, I've really enjoyed the tracks around a period of they finished their relationship with the label when they're attempting to kind of maybe get a little bit of chart recognition and chart success, and then they kind of reassert their kind of outsider identity back in the kind of counterculture, and they do the single "Real Woman." I'm not a real woman, which is this kind of joyous, riotous, defiant sort of knees up. It's lovely. One time I think they did I think it's the one time they did a video, a kind of home video to sort of promote it long before the days of MTV or anywhere they might be able to show it. But it's this lovely, absolutely defiant feminist message from a middle-aged woman who's just saying, if you can't deal with it, fuck off. Like, I just don't care. Like, this is me getting over it. And it's just so lovely. Yeah, I'll stick with that one. Yeah, but, I'll say I'm not a real woman. I just think it's lyrically it's perfect, and it's got such a cracking tune. And it was always number of times I saw them, it was always such a strong song for them to play live. And she loved it, clearly. I mean, of the set, it was really a song she absolutely got into. And why not? Why would she not? Sort of on that, the period, the pre-period that I know is she and Pete and Jem are moving down to Brighton. They'd lived in a sort of a farmhouse out in the wilds a little bit and kind of moved to Brighton, was making connections with kind of Richard Famous at that point, and Sue Cooper, who's the original bass player. Pete played bass a lot for Poison Girls in the early days, but Sue Cooper as Belladonna was one of the earliest bass players, and they start as a theatrical outfit. So Poison Girls' roots is not in rock and roll, although Richard Famous had played in bands before then. But for 1975, they produced this kind of piece of alternative theatre called The Body Show, which they take to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and is all kind of mired in controversy, and the authorities think The Body Show will have loads of nudity in it and lots of inappropriate things happening on stage, none of which happened at all. And they had coppers coming along to kind of watch the performance. They obviously made them buy tickets to kind of come in, ready to pounce on any indecency or outrage that was happening on the stage. And I think that experience, that sort of the theatricality of that, I think definitely you see that influence right the way through kind of Poison Girls' story. So their background is not rock and roll, it's theatrics, if you like. And they come back from that experience and they start playing around with different lineups under different names. And Poison Girls eventually kind of solidifies around that. And what gives them the final kicker is what's happening in 76 and 77, when they kind of lose some of their ties to the kind of hippie and alternative kind of counterculture and kind of connect much more with punk. But I think that experience, that pre-punk experience, explains why they're quite interested in things like the cabaret format they come up with. So after they separate from Crass, they do a lot of gigs together, 100 plus gigs together with Crass. And, that's very kind of Ramalama, kind of full on, like immersive experience that kind of those shows were like. And they wanted to do something a little different, a little softer, something that they hoped could attract more women to come and see the band. And they put together a cabaret style tour. So there would be poets, there would be comics, there would be kind of two-piece musicians, combinations of kind of various kinds, and then boys and girls would kind of wrap up the evening. And it was a very different style of experience to what you would be seeing from sort of mainstream punk thing, which would be like, a support band and a band and loads of thrashing and loud guitars and thumping drums and all that stuff. And they were presenting a very different kind of evening of different types of art and creativity and performance to try and put something together that was different and maybe could pull in different people and reach an audience in a different way. And I think they became interested in that because they'd had this theatrical past. So if your immersion in punk begins when you're 16 and you pick up a guitar, well, you don't have that reference point, do you? About, putting on a piece of theatre or thinking about what you can do on a stage or having experience of having done other things. But they had all of that to kind of call on. So they were quite relaxed about saying, well, we'll share the stage with a theatre troupe,
Yeah.
Or they will have stand-up. People like Tony Allen, an anarchist kind of stand-up, would kind of come on and open for them. Or they have a band like Akimbo, a brilliant two-piece band. In any kind of things that they could just kind of mix up the usual kind of rock and roll model and do something a little bit different. So that's probably my strongest knowledge of their sort of pre-punk stuff.
Yeah.
By writing the stuff for Poison Girls, it's an analog era. There aren't any of these online traces that you could kind of follow because it's all print and physicality and vinyl and all that sort of stuff. But by time when punk broke, I was living in Exeter in Devon in the southwest. The old gag, it's not the middle of nowhere, but you can see the middle of nowhere from there. And I was sort of fractionally too young, frustratedly too young at the time, because I was about sort of 13, 14 when sort of punk broke. So if you think about things like the Filth and the Fury sort of tabloid cover following the kind of Grundy show, well, I would never have been able to see the Grundy show because I didn't live in London. And my recollection of that kind of explosive moment in the media is me pushing them through people's letterboxes because I was a paper boy. So I remember that front cover of the Filth and the Fury, Sex Pistols kind of big moment. But I remember it as being a 14-year-old paper boy going around putting copies through people's letterboxes. So yeah, we were fractionally too young to be part of the original kind of wave. But so I first formed a band in school in 1979. And we, for reasons I think are pretty inexplicable, we settled on the name Metro Youth. I don't know why we did. I wish I had a time machine. I would go back and call ourselves something else. But we did gigs in the local area. We did some support slots with the Body Snatchers, one of the sort of bands in the ska scene. We played a couple of gigs with Temple Tudor, and then we put forward a track to go on the Bullshit Detector album. So we appear on Bullshit Detector 2 with the track Brutalized, which we were, tough to bits to be able to kind of get that opportunity and kind of get that exposure. And through the conversations with Crass, then we put on two Crass gigs in Exeter, one in 82 and another one in 84, as a result of having those interactions with the band around that. And then soon after that, we formed Sanction, again, while we were still living in Exeter. We didn't get to the point of recording anything, unfortunately. We didn't last a huge long time. But yeah, there are various kind of demos and kind of live recordings and some of the stuff that we did sort of from out there. So in both Metro Youth and initially in Sanction, I was playing with Heather Dean, who was called Hef at the time. I'm not sure if you've come across a band called Toxic Shock. There are various bands called Toxic Shock, but a feminist duo from Birmingham called Toxic Shock, who played a lot with Poison Girls, went on tour with Poison Girls. So at the time we were forming Sanction, Hef was playing with us, and then she was starting to play with Al in Toxic Shock. And in the end, they decided to focus on the Toxic Shock route. And very quickly we're on tour with Poison Girls, and they also then released some material through the Vindaloo label. Robert Lloyd of the Nightingales label, he signed them up to do some material as well. So those are my very small claim to fame bands, Metro Youth and Sanction.
So yeah, I remember Toxic Shock because they were around in the 90s. Well, they probably played 120 Rats.
I know. Yeah.
Didn't Al go on to do another band called Cupid Stunt, or did I imagine that?
Yeah, there was a lot of spin-offs, and I hand up. I haven't got all the detail kind of on all of them. I've been back in touch with Heather, kind of more recently, again around this Poison Girls book. She did a nice interview about the experience of being in Toxic Shock and being on the road with Poison Girls, and sharing some memories of Vi and stuff as well. I've reached out to Al more recently, not heard anything back as yet. It's a great example of going back to the Lance Hahn book, the Let the Tribe Increase book, is that Lance had just almost kind of got some notes on kind of Toxic Shock. I think he'd found sort of one sort of fanzine interview, so he'd written a few hundred words about them. And that was one of the ones on my list. Well, we need to build this out. This is a good start, but this isn't enough. This doesn't kind of hold together. But now I've been able to interview Heather at least about her experiences of Toxic Shock. So that's going to form a key part of that book, and we'll obviously include Al's voice if we can get her to get in touch.
Okay. Hopefully she'll listen to this and she'll get in touch.
Yeah. Well, you get a mixture of you must have this when you reach out to people to talk to them. You get a mixture of people who go, absolutely, love to talk about it. What time do you want me? You get people who go, well, maybe I'm a bit busy and it's a bit flaky and it's a bit hit and miss whether you get them. And then you get the no, thanks. That's a closed book. No, the answer's no.
Yeah.
So going through the Lance Hahn process of reaching out, I've had all of those to respond. I'm sure you get that as well.
Oh yeah, I have. Even with 120 Rats, I thought there'd be more people, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they've not got good memories of me, because I used to get pissed a lot. So like, oh God, not her. Staggering around with a special brew and a cigarette in one hand.
Indeed. And we're hoping to do a few kind of live events around the Poison Girls book and the Poison Girls CD. So the first one is going to be in April in Nottingham at the Five Leaves Bookshop, which is the city's independent bookshop. So Bella Donna, who I mentioned earlier, Sue Cooper, who's the band's original bass player. So I'm going to interview her about the early days of Poison Girls and her experience. She had a very active political life before she was in the band. She was involved in the anti-apartheid movement, involved in the women's movement, lots of experience, had parents who were in the Communist Party, lots of very strong political background. And so I'm going to interview her about the early days, and then she's going to interview me about the later days and about the process of writing the book. And we're hopefully to do a few more of those. So we're trying to see if we can get a spot on the I think it's the Manchester and Salford Anarchist Book Fair and some other kind of places just to do some in-person sort of interviews, if that's possible. Obviously the key members of the band really sadly are no longer with us, but I can at least go out and sort of fly the flag and talk about what for me the band was about and what it meant. People listening to this are interested in hearing me warble on about matters Poison Girls, then please get in touch with the Hippies Now Wear Black site. We'd be very, very happy to come out and spread the word about this. And for everybody involved in this process, it's been a labour of love. This is someone looking to make money or have a career out of this is making some bad choices. This is like this is doing it because this story is important and should be told. So when I talk about wanting to promote it and advocate it, it's not because I'm looking to earn from that process. It's just like, this is really important. This story should be out there. People should hear about this. They've not had the recognition that they deserve. We're trying to begin the process of rectifying that. So if you're interested in helping us do that, that would be fantastic. And thank you very much for inviting me onto the podcast to talk about that very thing.
Do you know what, Richard? Thank you for your time today and being
It's been lovely.
Being part of my mad podcast enterprise.
Yeah. And if you're in that 18 to what was it demographic?
My demographic. Oh, I thought you meant my demographic. We won't go there. But the 18 to
amongst your
18 to
listeners.
35. Yes, I was a bit taken aback, and we've got listeners from all over the world as well. Somebody from we've got Singapore, Japan, we've got America, we've got Spain, we've got France, we've got Canada. Yeah, when I look at the places in the world as well, from people who tune in and download the podcast, it's really interesting. You must get that as well. You must look at your demographics and go, "Dear God, they're looking at me from all over the world. I didn't expect that."
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and the ability to do that.
I know.
I mean, we used to swap fanzines, print fanzines, with people everywhere across Europe and kind of across North America. You'd find an address and a little review in a fanzine, and you'd send them off. And most of the time it worked. You kind of send it off on a hope that they would send you something back. And actually, most of the time they did. But a little bit easier now to reach out across the planet than it was then.
It was because I was sort of like, obviously in the 90s that was still going on, and I really enjoyed reaching out to people like that, and posting things off and getting things back. And I was in my very, very first band. I did the very first recording, like sending the copies of the EP off to as many different fanzines as I could find, and I'd get recordings and fanzines and stuff back, and it was lovely.
It's great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I used to love that part of it, just seeing what had arrived in the post. It's fantastic. And I've still got hundreds of fanzines from all over the world as a result of that. Just to check them all. But yeah, it was a brilliant way to do it. Kind of missed that in a way, but some side of it. Yeah, to be able to podcast and reach people, or like I do, have a website, blog it out, and reach people literally across the globe is great.
And I bet there's people that you're still in contact with today that you used to write to.
Oh yeah, I mean quite a few, and people kind of get in touch through the Hippies Now We're Black site. Maybe they search for my name or whatever you. So that's been really nice. People have kind of got back in touch, and so I mean, like Heather from Toxic Shock got back in touch because she learned through other contacts that I was working on the book for Poison Girls, and then kind of reached out as a result of that. So yeah, and that happens a fair bit. People who I knew from back in the day kind of get in touch. And I did one for our chapter on Metro Youth in the Lance Hahn book. Lance interviewed me back in the early 2000s, and he was a piece in Maximum Rock and Roll based on that. But I was able to track down all of the members of the band, with the exception of Heather, who I now am in touch with. And that was great. And they were in the four corners of the world as well. Reach out and get them to tell me their memories of being in the band. And that was really nice because I had really, really positive memories of it, and incredibly positive memories of it. And when I would kind of reach out and made contact with them again, I wasn't sure they were going to have positive memory. They might come back and go, "Oh, it's a bit of a waste of time, wasn't it? Oh, it was boring, or I don't think about that." And all of them, without exception, were really, really positive, really valued it, and a really good take on it. Not rose tinted either, but a really sensible, tuned in, kind of good take on it. And that was a nice affirmation that it meant a lot to me, and I was really pleased to learn it meant a lot to them as well. That was great. So yeah, lots of contact as a result of having, you have a presence like a website or a podcast. It is a way of people finding you and getting in touch with you.
Yeah, and like keeping those memories sort of. Because if you don't share them, then they've gone with you, and I think there's things that people should hear. I've only kept you long enough, but it's been so good talking to you, and I've always
been lovely.
Yeah, and there's so much love for Vi, and this is a really important book, and I support 100%. And anything you need me to do with that promotion or anything, if you want me to do anything and anything else,
that's great. I appreciate that.
Please let me know. Okay.
Certainly will. All right, lovely to talk to you. It's been great. Okay.
Soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Punk Rock Creators Podcast, and we'll catch you soon. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Bye.